Good morning. I am in a new room today because I have some digging going on next door to me. So I tried to move to the part of the house that's quieter. You might still hear occasional beeping. It's like the backup of a backhoe. But hopefully you don't hear it too much. We're gonna proceed without worrying too much about it. We're going to work on our hips today. It's back bending week in the yoga cycle. So we're going to do a lot of targeting the hips and mobility for the hips. And hopefully you enjoy it. But hips are a big piece of back bends. Most of us are very tight in the hip flexors, which can be really limiting in the experience of back bends. So we will do a couple back bends, but the focus really will be on mobilization of the hips. So we're going to begin seated and taking some time just to let ourselves arrive, let the mind catch up with where the body is. So just take a moment to find your way into your seated, supported position. Just kind of rolling weight back and forth over the sitting bones, finding the center points of the sitting bones. Also just kind of investigate if you have evenness across the left and right sides. And then think about your pelvic bowl. So sometimes we sit with a little bit of a kind of a pushing forward action in the abdomen. Sometimes we're rounded in the lower back. So we want to be very neutral with the torso being long in the front, long in the back. Neutral pelvic bowl. So that idea that if it was full of liquid, we don't want it pouring out the front. We don't want it pouring out the back. A neutral pelvic tilt. And then moving the shoulders back in line with the hips. Making sure your feet are right underneath your knees. Your knees are as wide as your hips. And then place your hand somewhere that allows the shoulders to stay set back above the hips. And then finally adjust your skull. So sometimes that means we have to move the head back. You can think about moving the head back by lengthening from your chin up to the base of the skull. You might also envision the face moving toward the back of the head. So these are kind of more subtle adjustments than pulling your head back, which sometimes can be over exaggerated. And then close your eyes and look down away from the brain, giving the brain a signal to become a bit quieter. And just start to really fill your body with your attention. So you might notice the parts of your body that meet the floor or meet the chair, or where your hands meet your thighs. Noticing if there's any constriction in the abdomen. Noticing your breath flow, the rhythm, the ratio of the inhale to the exhale. Noticing where there's tension holding. There's some usual suspects, such as the skin of the face. We do hold a lot of tension there because of the sense organs being there. Oftentimes the belly, the jaw. And you might have other places as well, the shoulders, the neck. And then just putting forth some sort of intention for this practice, whether it be having to do with your body, having to do with your mental state, having to do with your day. Maybe it's something else, but just kind of giving a little bit of context. And the power of intention is very strong. So when we name what we are kind of setting out to do, it's a powerful act. As you're ready, joining the hands together in front of your heart, lifting your heart, bow toward your heart. And then let your hands release down, let your head gently come up, and welcome. I just am remembering I forgot to bring my singing bowl, so we'll pretend I have it here. But welcome everybody. So if you just joined, welcome Shar and Laura. We're going to work on the hips today a lot. So we're going to just begin by waking up the spine first, just so we feel a little bit more mobilized in the central energy channel. So we're going to do dolphin dives, which is a pretty efficient way to wake up the spine with flexion and extension. So you want to take a little bit of a wider stance so that you have space for your torso to pass through. It might not come that far, but just in case it does, you want to make room for it. And we're going to start by rounding the spine down. So the chin will tuck in, the belly button will pull back, and you're just going to kind of round your spine as much as you can, one single curve. Bring your head down low. And this is all exhale. And then inhale, arching up, arching your back, leading with your chest, taking your eyes forward, and then undulate. So you're back into the forward rounding position. You're bowing down. You're going to try to move with your breath. So matching the movement with the length of your exhale. Inhale to come up. And just notice, you might be really stiff. That's okay. You might be really slow. You might have spots that are sticky, spots that are talking to you. So just pay attention to it. I like to say replacing any judgment we might make on ourselves, replace it with curiosity. And curiosity, we don't care really what the answer is. We're just curious as to what's happening. So coming into the next upright position, we'll just switch how we're doing this. And we'll lead with the sternum. Try to keep your eyes forward. The arch is in your back on the way down now, the back bend here. So leading with your chest, like you're dipping your breastbone into a little pot of ink on the floor. And then you're going to round your spine up and your head will come up last. And we'll do 4 more of those. So really looking for smoothness as your primary goal here, rather than how many of these you do or how deep they are. Smoothness. And then notice how you're getting a nice little lubrication to the hip joints here as you go. And I believe we have 1 more to do. So just taking your way down and up again. And then when you're up, resolve any dizziness, wait it out. And we'll do our spinal twist, turning 90 degrees on the chair seat, and you can turn to your right. And then we'll use our hands to the back of the chair to help us. And I like to have you lift the elbows just a little wider, which kind of gives your chest a signal to spread. So holding the chair, just don't pin the elbows to the sides, lift them up. Good, you guys look good. And then start to turn toward the back of the chair, but let your head come in last. So don't start with the head, finish with the head moving. And don't force anything. So there is a natural stopping point in the body. You're going to start there. And with every exhale, maybe gently supporting a deeper twist. And remember to inhale and lengthen your spine. Very important, so that we don't telescope the spine. We want to keep the spine very tall. And then you might finish now turning your head and looking over the far shoulder. So this would be your right shoulder. And then you'll inhale and come out of your deep twist, and you can do a 180-degree turn on your chair. And even though it's a little bit compromised, do your best to keep your feet right under the knees. You might have one of your buttocks hanging off a little bit. That's okay. Take hold of the chair, lift the elbows, spread the chest, and just gently, breath by breath, you're turning toward the back of the chair. You're going to keep your chin above your sternum for now. Think about how the spine twists and then the rib cage follows and floats around that action. It comes into the twist as well. Feel those right side ribs starting to come around to the front body. And then finishing an exhalation, inhale. Oh, I forgot to have you turn the head though. Let's finish with the head, looking over the left shoulder, just to bring that twist all the way up to the brainstem. And then you'll inhale and come out of it. And you can turn back to facing forward in the chair. So last but not least, we'll do lateral movement for the spine before we get into the hips. So just grab hold of your chair with your left hand. Feel the evenness of the sitting bones. You're going to try to maintain that, and we'll extend the right arm up. Take an inhale here, and on your exhale, lengthening to the left, and right away putting weight back into your right sitting bone. And even though we have a shorter left side body here, try to find some space or restore some space to the left side body. So if your shoulder is crashing down toward the hip, maybe with every inhale, just bringing a little bit of floating some breath between those left side ribs. And then those of you that were ballerinas, don't do the ballerina arm. It's more clean line of energy to straighten out that elbow joint. I was also in ballet, so I had to unlearn that one when I took up yoga after my years of being a dancer. And then inhale, you're going to lift yourself up and out of it. And then we'll place the right hand down and raise the left arm. Okay, so once the arm is up, inhale strongly, exhale, lengthening over to the right, putting some weight back in your left sitting bone. And so obviously we're getting a left side body elongation, but remember to restore space to the shorter right side body. So don't rob Peter to pay Paul, as it were. We want to somehow create space in both sides of the body. And of course, we're also trying to get the spine to move laterally, that crescent shape. So kind of taking it farther and farther as you're able to go. And then we'll use a nice big in breath to lift us out and bring the arm down. Good. So we got through the 6 actions of the spine, and we're going to start to move into the hips. We're going to be working with the right foot first, and you're going to kind of step onto the toes and ball mound like you have a stiletto high heel under your heels. The heel's lifted. And we're just going to do our best with moving the knee in and out. So we're just kind of exploring internal and external hip rotation here. You probably won't be able to do a full figure 8. That's a little bit more intricate than your hip will probably allow. But just explore how far you're able to go in with the knee and out with the knee. Explore how it feels when you go in with the knee and out with the knee. Some of us are more prone to external hip rotation, and some of us are, it's easier to do internal. So you're just kind of learning here what is easier for you, what your range of motion is. You might already know. I happen to have less internal hip rotation. So for me, bringing the knee in always feels a little bit more challenging than taking it out. And then you probably have a good idea by now with the right side. So we're going to just step down with the right foot, do the same thing on the left. So you're lifting the heel off the floor. You're just starting to explore space, just kind of waving the knee back and forth. It might look like a crescent or half moon shape that you're making with your knee pattern. You might be able to do a little bit more of a figure 8 if you can kind of work into that, but just kind of explore space. Don't get too obsessed about how perfect your little movement pattern is. And if you find a place that has extra sensation, you might stay there and just kind of explore it. You might just kind of move fluidly. So just make inquiry into the body. It's always the idea. Good. And then we can set the foot down. And we'll keep the right knee kind of at a 90 degree. And if you, some of us have, need to put a block there so that the knee is level with the hip. So if you need to put a block under your foot, you make sure to do that. We want the thigh kind of sitting level with the floor. We're going to be extending the left leg. So this is what we call Marichyasana pose in yoga. It's named after an ancient sage, yoga sage named Marichi. And it's a good hip opener. So we're going to be turning to the right. We're going to start with the left arm, the left hand taking hold of the right thigh, and the right hand just propped immediately behind your buttocks. So not like a kickstand, not farther back, just right under the shoulder line as best you can. You're going to start to turn in an upright torso position. We'll be going a little deeper in a moment. And now to take it a little bit farther, you're gonna prop your forearm, that left forearm, on your right thigh. And you may not need this, so your body will let you know if this is too much. You could come back to just holding the thigh with the extended left arm. But if you're able to, you're gonna pressurize that forearm into your thigh and again, rotate. But now the spine is kind of more at an angle. It's a forward bend with a twist. You should be squeezing the right knee toward midline because for most of us, it wants to flop out wider. So it's a little bit of hip abduction, meaning you're moving toward midline.
Hey, Marka.
And then just keep moving your spine to the right. And now on an inhale, you're going to come up and step the left foot back under you. And we'll do the same thing to the other side. So we're going to be stretching out the right foot. You're trying to put the toes right above the heel. Leg is firm. And we're going to start just taking the right hand to the left thigh. Left hand immediately right behind you under the shoulder. And just start to turn the spine into a twist. We've already done one nice twist earlier, so the spine's a little bit more supple, but you still might be working with some resistance. So just taking it as it comes, don't force anything. That's how we get injured. And then once you feel like you've found a good deep twist, then you might try to prop the forearm on the thigh, and you might know that's not wise today. So I'm going to jump downstairs and just see what these guys need. And just hold that twist for 5 deep breaths with the forearm down or the arms straight. I'll be right back. Sorry, guys. We're going to come out of that twist, maybe you already have, and come back up. All right, so we're going to come into a seated, wide-legged forward bend. You might be comfortable dangling your arms. You might want to put blocks here if you need some support. But you're going to sit really far back on your chair just so that you don't do a somersault and roll out of your chair. And try to keep the heels under the knees, but now the knees are nice and wide. You're going to notice that the knees naturally pull in together. So the work with your hips is going to be pressing the knees out. And if you think about how that relates in the hip socket, that means the femur head is kind of pushing inward on the pelvis. So you kind of have to think about these things when you're doing them, just so you can kind of get the mechanics, kind of visualize them. I find it helpful to visualize that in my body. So you're pressing the knees slightly outward. You're going to take the hands down to the blocks or the floor. And then the idea is to really keep the legs a little bit working and active, but then let the torso kind of cascade down, let the skull hang freely. So don't hold with your neck. Don't keep your neck kind of stiff or rigid. Keep working the knees gently toward the small toe side of the foot. Just 3 more breaths. And after that next breath, you're going to start to come up. Use your hands to your thighs, press down on your thighs, bring your torso up. And now bring your knees back just as wide as the hips. Good. So a way to kind of advance that, and I didn't bring my blocks up, but is we would start to not elevate the hands, but then we would start to elevate the feet. So we're getting into deeper hip flexion. So that's something we can try down the road as we start to kind of deepen into our practice, is getting the feet higher and the torso is still going to go nice and low. It just becomes more compact. And the work of yoga really is taking poses, making them more compact, and then our work is always to make them feel spacious. So down the road, we'll play with a little more depth in that, but not today. We're going to start to work with external hip rotation. This is going to be kind of a choose your own adventure because we all have different needs with our hips, and we all have different needs between our right and left hips usually. So we're going to start working with the right hip. Extend your left leg and just kind of take the most mild right shin crossing over left shin position, or it might be your right ankle over your left shin. And if that feels like you have sensation and you're meeting some good work, then you're going to stay there. If you're not feeling much, you will bend your left knee and you'll be propping your right ankle onto your left thigh. So from either position, whatever you're choosing, whether it's left leg extended or left knee bent, you're going to be leaning forward just to kind of invite a little more sensation into the right hip space. What we don't want to do is rotate the knee. So if your knee is taking on sensation, that's a bad sign. We should not feel anything in the knee when we're working with the hips. So if you do feel it in the knee, you have to back off. You either need to sit up a little more, or you need to work with that first starting position. But we don't want the knee to be feeling anything. So you have to kind of take a few moments to find the area, the position that's going to work for you. And then you're going to sit forward and give it some breath. So you're meeting that sensation, you're noticing it, it's there, it's tolerable, so it's not over or underwhelming. That's always important to make that assessment. And if your mind is able to stay present, that's a big clue that you're in a good position for yourself. If your mind is wandering, you're either bored or you're stressed. When we're bored or stressed, the mind flits away. So the mind, you can watch it and know that you're probably in a good position. If you're able to stay with the sensation, you're able to breathe, you're able to focus. And imagine your breath swirling around the hip. So for most of us, our hips are very tight. And for most of us, well, all of us actually, we have to wait in hip openers. We can't just do them quickly because we wait out reflexes where the hips are contracting against what we're trying to do. So we're just kind of waiting this out. We're breathing slowly. We're familiarizing with this sensation in the hip. So the first 30 seconds are usually just waiting out reflexes. And now we're just kind of into that sweet spot. So you're going to take the next 5 breaths and really work into your exhales. Imagine you're kind of siphoning out tension from your right hip space with your exhalations. Good. Okay, so let's start to come up on an inhale. Just start to bring yourself out of your forward bend. Scoop your both hands behind your right thigh, just kind of support from the back of the thigh. Extend the leg. And this is again just for the knee. So we did not misalign the knee. We're going to take care of it if we did. You're going to flex the foot, like pushing your heel forward, your toes pulling toward your body, straighten the leg and firm the muscles. And that's usually the best way to kind of put the knee back into good alignment. And then step down. So left side might be a different story. So we're just going to go in with the same kind of baby steps, crossing in that low position first. Maybe deciding you're going to take it higher, depending on what kind of the feeling is. And you don't have to lean forward and exaggerate it. You might move forward a millimeter. That might be all you need. Make sure you're not feeling it in your knee. And then again, once you're kind of in that target area, we're just going to focus on the breath as we wait out those reflexes of resistance and contraction. basically where nothing happens, no progress is made. We're just waiting for the body to let go of that reactive kind of gripping that happens. And then after those 30 seconds or so, you might start to sense that the hip is letting a little tension go. You might sense that you're able to move a bit forward. You might also sense you're still in the same position, and that's fine too. So just 3 more breaths here. And then when you're ready, you can inhale, just come up. Take hold behind the left thigh, extend the leg, straighten the leg fully, pull the toes toward you, press out through the heel, firming the quadriceps, really putting the knee in a good stabilized position, and then step down. Good. Okay, so the hip flexors are in front, the inner thighs are on the insides of the legs, and then the outer hips on the outsides, and then there's the hamstring. So all these surrounding muscles we kind of have to target when we're working with our hips. So right now we're going to target the groins and the inner thighs, because if they're tight, you're going to distort your hip mobility and you're going to limit it. So we're going to do gate pose, stepping the right foot out to the side, and then the left knee is going to be directly forward in front of the hip. And then you're just going to use your hand to press that knee toward the small toe side, because passively the knee drops in. So we're just trying to correct for that, keeping the knee in line with the toes with enough pressure of the hand to keep it there. And then you're going to start to revolve your torso from the right to the left, only to the point where your shoulders and hips are all squaring with the camera. And keep breathing. You're going to feel, hopefully you're going to feel that inner thigh elongating. Breathe, breathe, breathe. And we're going to work with this a little bit similarly to how we worked with that Marichyasana pose. If you're able to, the next piece would be to prop the forearm on the thigh. Palm is up. And keep using the arm in a way that you're kind of pushing that knee toward the small toe side. Keep turning your torso from the right ribs towards the left ribs, just so you're kind of resisting that tendency to point your torso toward the right leg. And just to give this left arm something, put the hand to the back of the head and then reach up through that left elbow and just kind of take the left elbow back. And of course, if that hurts the shoulder, don't do that piece. Just leave the arm out of it. Breathing, give it a few more breaths, elongating that right inner thigh. And now gently, you're going to turn, release that left hand down, support your torso coming back upright. You can step your right knee in front of the right hip. And we'll just do the same thing to the other side. Attempting to put that left knee kind of pointed out to the side. Notice how the knee aligns with the toes, and you're doing your best to keep the knee tracking with the toes. Use your hand to keep it there. And then just initially, we're just revolving the torso from left to right. We're sensing into that left inner thigh region, the groin, keeping the shoulders and hips squared up. So remembering when we did the crescent moon shape with the spine, as you prop the left forearm on the thigh, try not to collapse or telescope the left side body. So somehow creating or maintaining as much space as you can to the left side body. And it does help to use that forearm and press it into the thigh. Press it down into the thigh to help recover some space to the left side body. Keep squeezing your knee toward the small toe side. Breathe. Come to the top of the next inhale. And then you can bring your elbow down, your hand down. You can support your torso coming back upright. And then we'll take that left foot and just bring it right in front of the hip again. Nice work. All right. So we're going to come into seated hip flexor work. And we've done this several times before. You kind of have to angle your buttock on the chair so that you're able to drop your right toes kind of back behind you and point your right knee down. And we're going to play with it a little differently than we have in the past. In the past, we've kind of emphasized pressing the toes down into the floor to really direct the line of the knee down. But today, because it's back bending week, I want to bring more of our focus to the pelvis. So usually once we're here in this kind of rough position, which I see you guys have all made it there, perfect. Usually it throws the pelvis into a forward tilt, meaning the front rim of the pelvis is lower than the back rim. So I want you to think about tipping the pelvis back. So it kind of feels like your tailbone moves in toward the front body. You might start to sense the front right hip flexor yawning open, elongating, becoming less concave, ironing it out, that kind of sensation. So just kind of feel the pelvis, the natural tendency for it to sit forward, and we're just always in yoga, we're always equalizing these imbalances. You're trying to lift and scoop the pelvis like you're drinking out of a coffee cup. It's the same tilting action of the pelvic bowl. And just hold and breathe. So just holding this kind of refined pelvic tilt as you kind of work towards ironing out that right hip flexor, which of course, for most of us, it's very tense. We do a lot more leg flexion and hip flexion than we do extension. So we have a lot of compensatory action to do with the hip flexors. Okay, so that was a lot of holding. So just start to softly release out of it, and you'll swivel on to the other side. And however far back you need to step the foot, you're just attempting to get your thigh bone kind of vertical as best you can. It might not be perfect, but just do your best. And then you're doing your best to shift that pelvic tilt. So you might feel like you're kind of pitched forward over the floor. That's a sign you're really in a forward pelvic tilt. We want to reverse that. We want to tip the pelvis back. So you're going to take the tailbone into the front body. It might help to look forward, straight ahead, rather than down. You might think about the flesh of the lumbar, the lower back, elongating rather than bunching. So you're lengthening the lumbar with this action. You might gently move the stomach muscles towards the lower back. And think about, you can even touch the left hip flexor area where the thigh comes right up to the pelvis. We're trying to open that. And that's really what we're targeting here. So as best you can, try to move that area forward, even though it really wants to become kind of concave. You're trying to lengthen there. And then gently begin to release those actions and come back to just sitting on your chair, facing forward. So we're going to come into some standing work for the last section of the class. And you can find your way to standing. We'll just take mountain pose once you are standing, just to kind of recenter yourself now that you're in an upright position. You don't need your chair. We will use it in a little bit, but you don't need it for mountain pose. So if you can, join the legs and feet. Otherwise, feel free to keep some space there between the feet. Look at your feet. Lift all of your toes from the floor. Spread the toes nice and wide. And do your best to keep the heels in line with the second toes. Shoulders come back above the hips. Take the buttocks, the horizontal line of the mid buttock, and just imagine it moving forward. Then compensate by bringing the thighs front to back. So as if the backs of the thighs are absorbing the fronts of the thighs. Good, you guys look good. The skull is above the spine. And the feet are not just meeting the floor. Start to relax your feet and maybe sense that the feet are softening into the floor. So you're forming a connection with the floor energetically. Let the shoulders release down away from your earlobes. Keep your shoulder blades inserting toward the chest to keep the chest lifted and spread. And you might have a lot of motion, although I don't see a lot of you wobbling around, but whatever the motion is, just notice that it might be moving in a circular pattern, which I always think about how if you've ever grown peas, they have to climb on something and they wrap in a circular way. So if you feel that circular movement over the soles of the feet, it's very much your own intelligence, your inner body intelligence, trying to wrap and stay with the central axis, which is your spine. And over time, as you do this pose and as you practice more yoga, the pose becomes very still, even over the course of one practice. Good. So relax, release the effort, especially the legs, just kick the feet out. You may want to put the chair seat in front of you for tree pose, which is a pose that is a balancing pose. It's also a pose that uses external hip rotation on one side and hip abduction on the other, moving to midline. So we're going to start with the left foot being the standing leg, the left leg, I should say. And then the right heel, you're just going to prop to the left ankle or shin, wherever you meet. So do your best. Remember, the knee likes to droop in. So do your best to press your right knee toward the small toe side or the back of your mat. But at the same time, don't let the hip follow. So keep your hips, and this is why the chair might be useful, not only to hold, but to keep the chair evenly pressed up against your body as a reminder that we're not trying to let the right front body rotate with the hip. That's how we move. That's how we avoid moving the hip. So we're trying to kind of isolate, pressing the knee back, but keeping the right hip forward. Meanwhile, you're drawing the standing leg back to midline. You're not letting it push out as it might be trying to do. So sucking the left hip bone toward the midline, feel the left inner thigh coming closer to be consistent with the spine, and keep working the knee not only to the side, but back. So these are all really the finer points of the pose. And then if you're able to keep all that and bring your hands together or even overhead, that would be kind of the cherry on top. Of course, if you're able to lift the foot away from the floor, either bringing it onto the calf muscle or onto the inner thigh, that's another option. But make sure you're not compromising the integrity of the pose. There's a great quote that summarizes it: don't rob the instinct of the body just for the glory of the pose. So your instinct might be to keep the toes down because the pose is better that way. So don't rob that instinct just for the glory of that full pose. Okay, so as far as you've taken it, you're going to kind of reverse your steps. So if the arms went up, they come back down. If the foot went up, it comes back down. And then you're going to step onto your right foot and give your left leg a good shake. We don't want to start the second side already feeling tired. Just kind of refresh yourself, reset. And then we'll try second side. So just a good mountain foot. You want to have that nice broad toe base. You want the lengthened out sole of the foot with the right foot. And then you're propping the left heel, keeping the toes down for now. You might raise the foot in a moment, but for now we have our toes down. The knee is pointing off to the side. It's pressing back as well. And we're trying to keep the hip forward, not letting it move with the knee. So this is how we tap into the hip, as we keep that hip forward, press the knee back. Suck the outer right hip bone to midline, so we're not pushing out there. Draw that in. And then maybe you raise the foot. Maybe you take one or both hands to the heart center. Maybe you take one or both arms up. So in yoga, what you're looking at is called your gaze. It's very important. In Sanskrit, it's called the drishti. And it's a big piece of our poses. So in this pose, it's very helpful to have an equalizing gaze just on the horizon line. If you look up, it tends to arch you. If you look down, it tends to round you. So if you look straight onto the horizon line, you can kind of ensure a neutral spinal position, which is important in this pose. So keeping your gaze soft and steady. And then you're going to just start to come back out of it. Step your foot down and shake out the right leg. Good work. Okay, so we'll do a little more with hip flexors now. Taking the chair to either end of your mat, and we'll work with the taller side of the chair for the hands. We're going to be doing a little bit of work with lunging. So we'll start with the right foot kind of underneath the chair and the left foot back. And again, for most of us, there's that kind of tendency to tip forward with the torso, which is all stemming from the pelvic tilt. So scoop that pelvis, lift the front rim up, put your head right above your spine. Your spine is in a vertical position, and then straighten the left leg fully. And once you straighten the left leg fully and you've had time to get your torso upright, then that left hip flexor is in a really nice position to start to elongate. And it might mean that you're still slightly pitched forward. So you might have to kind of honor where you are and work toward a straighter leg or a straighter torso. So keep breathing, look straight ahead. That horizon line is useful here so that we don't round forward or tilt forward. You're going to spend 5 more breaths here. And when we hold yoga poses, we're never stagnant. We keep them alive with our breath and with our attention. So we're not just on screensaver mode right now. We're in the moment. We're breathing into the sensation. And we're staying with it. And now you're going to help yourself out. You might need to come out in your own special way. I want you to just kind of be careful with your body. And then you're going to step the left foot under the chair. So we'll do the very same thing with the left foot under the chair, the right foot stepping back. Your heel is lifted. That right heel is lifted. And just make sure your feet are hip distance apart, even though obviously they're not underneath your hips. You have some width between your feet. And then I didn't say this on the right side, but check out how you're weight bearing on your right foot, okay? So if you're more on your pinky toe ball mound than your big toe ball mound, correct for that, and vice versa. So I want you to be even across the ball mounds of the right foot. Okay, align the trunk, look straight ahead, move that tailbone in, tip the pelvis back, stretch the right leg as straight as you can. I see some of you taking arms up, which is fine. If you're able to include the arms up position without distorting the under the lower half of the pose, then go for it. Breathing, staying attentive to the weight bearing pattern across the right ball mounds. Tailbone plunging into the front body. Yawning open right hip flexor area. And then go ahead and you can find your way out in your own special way. And I'm saying that because sometimes it's best to come out in an intuitive way rather than to follow cues, because your body knows how to be safe usually most of the time. Okay, so we're going to keep kind of adding to that. We're going to do warrior 1, which is very similar. However, the back foot is grounded and we will attempt to take the arms up. So because we're going to try that, if you truly need the chair for balance, keep it. Otherwise, we don't really need it, but I'm going to trust you to make your own best decision on what's best for you. And we'll stand to face the short end of the chair. So if you, or mat. So if you are using a chair, it'll be right in front of you and the higher part is going to be supporting you. Right foot steps forward, left foot steps back, and the left toes are slightly pointing toward the left edge of your mat. Your feet are still hip distance apart. So this is a pose where we have one leg in front of us, one leg behind us. So your hips are facing the short end of the mat. We're going to bend the knee second. So first, just take your arms up. And do your best to take the tailbone into the front body, to look straight ahead. Take an inhale here. On your exhale, you're going to bend your right knee above the right ankle. without letting your left knee bend and without letting your torso pitch forward over the floor. So this is warrior one. Extending straight up through the fingertips. Remember, your knee likes to wander in, so press your right knee gently toward the small toe side just to keep the kneecap in alignment with your toes, not actually moving it to align with the small toe. And pressing into the floor, straighten out the leg. Release the arms down. Good job, you guys, and step the feet together. So we'll do left side and then we'll take a mountain pose. So step your right foot back. Turn your right toes just slightly out so you're not, I call it Egyptian feet. We don't have two feet looking straight at the top of the mat. The back foot has to be turned out a little bit to allow for the skeleton of the right leg to have enough room. Start with straight, firm legs, a straight torso and straight arms, upright arms. Point your hips and shoulders squarely at the short end of the mat. Take a nice inhale here. On your exhale, take the left knee above the ankle without tilting the torso forward, without bending your right leg. Keep looking onto the horizon line. And even though you're not staring down at your left knee, try to get some idea of how the left knee is aligning with the left toes. And also make an assessment of how your weight bearing on the right ball mound. Are you all in the big toe ball mound? Are you all in the small toe ball mound? Try to be even across the sole of the right foot, across the ball mounds. Good. Push the floor away with that left foot, straighten the leg, lower the arms. And now we're going to put ourselves in mountain pose just to kind of receive the effects of that, to let the breath kind of regulate if it's a little bit raggedy. So once you're in position, feel free to close the eyes and let your breath be. So if it's a bigger, faster, louder breath, you're just gonna let it flow the way it is. You're not trying to quiet it down or make it smaller. And just observe how the breath does become smooth and even again. And then when you're ready, gently open the eyes. Nice work. Okay, so we've done a lot of working with hip flexors and working away from midline. We're going to do one pose, eagle pose, where we're moving the hips toward midline. And you'll probably want your chair for support. It's a challenging balancing pose. So we'll put the back of the chair closest to our bodies. And we're going to be stepping onto the left foot and taking the right toes outside the left foot. So it's kind of position. You see little boys have to go to the bathroom. They're squeezing their thighs together. It's kind of that same position. Both knees have a little bit of give. So don't have a flamingo leg with your standing leg stiff. You want to have a little bit of a shock absorber knee. You want it to bend and straighten to compensate for motion that comes into the body. So both knees are bent. You're hugging the thighs together like you're holding a dime between your thighs, and your hips are moving toward midline. You're going to take your arms, if you're able to balance, otherwise keep your hands on your chair. Take your arms and you're going to tuck the left elbow under the right elbow and either grab your shoulders or connect your fingers to your palm. Okay, so you're squeezing to midline. You're taking the tailbone into the body. So we want to have a long lumbar spine here. You're keeping your chest broad. You're going to raise the elbows. If you have the arms at play here, you're going to raise the elbows slightly. You're breathing. Imagine there's a giant belt around your hips, just holding them together, very stabilizing. And then on an inhale, you're going to step the right foot out. You're going to unwrap the legs to extend the arms across the floor. So this is 5-pointed star. I find it really relieving to follow eagle pose with this pose where we just kind of let all the energy flow back out through the fingertips, the feet, and the top of the head. You might close your eyes, you might not. Do relax your shoulders. So one way you can relax the shoulders is just imagine your shoulder blades sinking down your back body. Relax your jaw. And then slowly release the arms and step the feet together. So we'll do the very same thing to the other side. The right leg will be our standing leg. We're gonna lift up the left foot and just take the toes right outside the right foot. You can keep your toes down if you need to. Otherwise, the foot is lifted and you're hugging the foot to the outer shin bone. Okay, so you decide what needs to happen. Both hips move into midline, especially the standing leg hip. And you're gonna let both knees have a little bit of give so that you can respond to movement. If you're gonna add the arms in, you're also taking the arms to kind of a 90-degree elbow first, right in front of your shoulders, Laura. So there you go. And then you're gonna bring that right elbow under the left and either grab your shoulders or take your hand, your fingertips to your palm. So just 3 or 4 breaths here. Broadening between the shoulder blades, taking the tailbone in, keeping the chest lifted and spread, imagining everything moving to the center of the body. And then on an in-breath, you're going to step out with the left foot, extend your arms, receive your breath. So let the breath come and go just as it is. Drop the shoulders. And then go ahead and release the arms down and step the feet together. Okay, so I just have to do a little bit of a time check. I don't trust my clock. Okay. So we're gonna do just a couple more things before we run out of time, basically. Put the chair to the right. And you're gonna step your feet wide. Take your hands to your hips. So we're gonna have our right toes pointing out to the side, left toes slightly turned in, right heel comes in line with the left arch of the foot, and then turn your torso enough that you can put your hips and your shoulders squared up with the broad side of the mat. So we're just gonna do a combination of warrior 2, triangle. And I find it's really helpful for the hips, this little combination where it's just a fluid little, we're gonna repeat it about 5 times. So warrior 2 is keeping the torso upright and bending the knee. Triangle is keeping the leg straight and angling the torso. Okay, so exhale is when you're kind of moving into the knee bend. Inhale is when you're pulling back. Exhale, triangle, torso. Inhale to come back. It's also nice to go in and out of movements quickly because then your body kind of learns them and understands how to get into them quickly and efficiently without, when you don't have as much time to come in and out of poses. You'll notice if you ever do other yoga classes, a lot of classes are called flow classes. They move quickly. I don't personally like them, but I do like them if you have a deep understanding of how the poses work and move, then I think they're great. But for most people, this is my little soapbox, who don't quite know the poses on a deeper level, to move that quickly in poses can compromise them. So I like to occasionally throw in a little quick kind of fluid movements so your body learns how to do these things a little bit quicker. So let's just do a couple more on this side. You guys look great. Last one. And remember on that knee bend one, you're not letting the torso pitch sideways. You're trying to keep the book on your head. So we have the chair there. It doesn't look like you guys need to use it. So pivot to the left. If you do feel like you want it there just for moral support, feel free. But otherwise, we'll just do the same thing to the left. So just remember with the knee bend, you're not trying to tip the torso, but then when you go into the triangle motion, you're kind of cutting back that, in this case, the left hip, and you are dipping the torso. Okay, exhale, exhale. When you bend the knee, remember to think about how the knee is tracking. We know the knee habit is to kind of cave in or track toward the big toe. So maybe pressing it gently toward the small toe. Good. So some of you, when you're going into that triangle, it looks like you're just letting your head do it. So just be conscious that it's the whole trunk. I just did both by accident. It's the whole trunk. The head moves with the spine, of course, but it's not just the head. Okay, so let me see those triangles. Good, that's better. Let's just do 2 more. Last one. Nice work. So once you're up, make sure your toes are pointing forward. You might walk your feet in with heels, toes, heels, toes. And now last but not least, we'll just check out one standing back bend. We're going to do crescent pose, the back bending version of crescent pose. So the chair is behind us, but it's not touching us. We do have to reach back so that your hands are beyond the shoulder line. So we're already kind of taking back bending actions here. Tilt the pelvis back, so take the tailbone forward. Put more pressure into the hands. You might even be able to grab the chair or put more pressure into your fingertips. Make sure your toes are pointing forward, your feet are hip distance. Lift your chest, let your eyes gently track up the wall. Couple deep breaths. Just opening those front hip flexors, rolling the inner thighs back, plunging the tailbone forward. And hopefully you kind of sense that the idea is not about kind of jamming up the lower back. We're trying to keep a sense of spaciousness as we arch back. Use an inhale to lift yourself up and out of it. Beautiful job. And so for the last couple minutes here, we're just going to sit quietly. Before we do so, we're going to rest in a child's pose. So either version, you might start with kind of a more mild version with your arms crossed over your thighs, and then move into a deeper version. You might need to stay mild after the back bend. So just listen to your body. And then as you're ready, you can start to gently come up and you'll sit back against the chair and just put yourself in a position where you can be as passive as possible seated in the chair. Make sure your shoulders are sitting back, your elbows kind of dangling right under the shoulders, your skull right over the spine. You're using the back of the chair for support. And then close your eyes, and just like you started, just kind of connect with the areas of your body, meeting the floor, meeting the chair, and really let yourself receive that support. So you're not just meeting these surfaces, you're kind of moving into them. So the practice of yoga is two pillars. It's practice and renunciation, which is translated as the work that we just did, and now the letting go. So just kind of letting the fist, the closed fist of a yoga practice, the tension that we invite, letting it go, and feeling kind of the flush of energy, the residual energy, maybe feeling the breath is opening up into new channels of the body. Maybe sensing the spaciousness you've invited in through the medium of the physical body is now kind of translating into spaciousness between the thoughts. The goal of yoga is to still the fluctuations of the mind. Yeah, go on. So you're just going to take the next several breaths, just give them your full attention. You're not trying to control breath, you're not trying to control thought. You're no longer trying to control the body. You're just passively witnessing. And start to enjoy a few deeper breaths. Maybe inviting a little bit of movement into your fingers, your toes, maybe starting to move wrists and ankles. Maybe rocking the head or gently rolling your chin from one shoulder to the other. And then gently just kind of move forward on your chair, using your own effort again to sit up tall. And join your hands together in front of your heart. Just take a moment here with eyes closed. One of the markers of like an effective practice of yoga is that we can access a sense of gratitude. So even if it's not immediately there, just maybe inviting a feeling of gratitude into your heart. Let's take a deep breath in together through the nose and let it go. From the place within me that I know to be divine, I honor that place within each of you. Namaste. All right. Well, thank you for joining today, and thank you for tolerating the chaos. We have a little bit going on. We have a pipe being replaced. So life, you know how it is. So I'll see you guys soon. Thanks for coming.